G'day, everyone, and welcome to another Quantum Achievers podcast. And today we have a real special guest. His name's Neville Christie, and he's been in my life for, I can't remember how long, forever. And there's been some really
100
interesting,
years.
literally,
Yeah.
that's just this lifetime. And
Mm.
he he comes at a very young age. He may be in his 80s, but he's actually very young. He's just beginning. Let's
Yes.
just put it that way. But I'm going to let him talk more about that. But just some background here. Neville's a serial entrepreneur. He's had many interests in many things. He's also a very deep diver into consciousness. He calls himself, um, uh, what do you call yourself again? There's
Oh,
been a few names over the years, but as we change,
at the moment, transformation agent.
transformation agent. Yeah, there's also been that business shaman along the way.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Urban shaman, business shaman, I'm still there, yes.
yes, and these identities change as we grow and develop. And he comes with enormous wisdom, which allows people to build their businesses and their lives around what he sees in people. And he's radically helped me in my business journey and my personal journey with some incredible books and his wisdom and insights. As a lot of you would have known on my journey, I had a radical jump into the quantum, and I can actually remember, Neville, one of those times where it was instrumental for me. I was quite delicate, let's just put it. And I remember we were in a restaurant in Melbourne, in inner city Melbourne, and Neville has the wisdom to understand what I was going through. And he asked me some questions, and he just saw that I just couldn't. It was just too much, and he quickly stabilized the energy and allowed me to keep on going. So Neville, I'd love to ask a question before you get started here. It's just a simple, lovely question, and that is, how did you create your reality?
That's an interesting question because it assumes two things. First of all, reality is a single point or something, a single entity. And secondly, that I've already got it because the realities, I think, even from the first day of my birth, my realities have been multiple, changing all the time. And a short answer to that is that I've spent my life in a wide variety of different environments and situations and had experiences that has changed my mindset multiple times. So at the moment, at 82, uh, I'm going through probably the biggest growth spurt of my whole life. And I'm living in what we might call multiverses, multi realities, and it's quite wonderful. So.
Yeah, I mean, the audience that this on Quantum Achievers, they love this type of conversation. Neville, you're on the right platform, that's for sure.
Right.
Tell
Yeah.
me about why at 82 is this the biggest growth that you're going through? Tell me more about that.
Uh, all my life I've been. Let me go back a little bit because it might be important just to fill a bit in. I was born in 1941 during the Second World War, when things were a lot more primitive in hospitals than they are now. For example, penicillin hadn't become sort of widespread until then, and a lot of the doctors were away at war. My mother was having full renal failure, and it turned out in the investigation before I was born, I was a breech birth. That is, that I was around the wrong way. My legs were at the opening of the birth canal, and the doctors had to turn me around. Mum was suffering full renal failure, and the doctors basically asked Dad, who should they keep alive, my mother or myself? And Dad, of course, his wife, Mum. As it turned out, they were able to turn me around, birth me, even though I had the umbilical cord around my neck. They dragged me literally out of the wound at great speed, and in so doing, they cause what's called a lordosis and a scoliosis. That is a distortion of my spine and my legs. Um, they cut the umbilical cord quickly and attended to Mum, and they managed to keep Mum alive. And they came back to me and said, "Gee, the plucky little bugger is still alive." And in a sense, from that time, I've always had a sense that I'm a plucky little bugger and I'm still alive, and it's and that's led me to all sorts of transformations. For example, at the age of 12, I moved from a family that a working class family that had no religious background. I voluntarily adopted a very extreme religious faith, an evangelical faith, which I see now as sort of at the extreme end of everything about life was wrong, and you can't do this and you can't do that, and the only life is afterwards. So that gave me a whole series of perceptions about who I was. I was bad, bad, bad. I was in need of being saved and redeemed and whatever. And then at 24, I volunteered and went to Malaysia as an Australian volunteer to do a project for UNESCO and also teach in an English medium school. And as I was going from in the train up from Kuala Lumpur up to the north of near the Thai border, I suddenly realised that nobody knew me. I didn't have any history as far as where I was going. I was a complete carte blanche. I could reinvent myself in any way. And so the big question came: who do I want to be? And that was like a huge epiphany. And I went up to Malaysia, and I found that there were huge number of different cultures, all with different worldviews, all with different realities, if you like. And I learned to adopt what I called a gizmo, and that was that as I would go from a Malay home to an Indian home to a Buddhist home to a Thai home, and they each had a different way of seeing the world. I would turn this little gadget in my up on my temple, and I'd click myself into a different reality, into a different world. Uh,
Hmm.
and this was amazing because I learned that the same questions in life were being asked in each of these cultures, but they came up with different answers. And then later, I had the great fortune to work with a number of shamans, both Aboriginal shamans and North American shamans. And as I deep dived into my psyche, instead of finding it bad, 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 like I'd been taught is an evangelical, I found it to be full of the most wondrous, glorious images and insights and awarenesses, and uh, that was transcendental. That put me on a totally different path, and I've been continuing that ever since. Now, why I'm on the highest growth route of my life now, I've reached a point where since I've been in business since I was 12, so that's 70 years, I've accumulated a great deal of intellectual property, what I call mindware, a whole lot of stuff about how to become the best me, how to build the best business, how to have the best relationships and create a different and better world. And so I've made the commitment to bring that all together and to promote it on a site called steeprenaissance.com. And in reviewing all of that material and going through it, it's helping me deal in an exponential way with becoming a far better version of myself. So it's quite amazing. And artificial intelligence and other technologies I'm using, mind changing technologies that you know a lot about. Um, they're just accelerating my growth enormously. And at 82, that's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience.
This is one of the major reasons. Well, not really, actually. I think it's a great byproduct that most 82-year-olds are, working out when they're going to die. Neville's always said this lovely thing. What is your quote, Neville, when you're leaving, and what happens?
Oh, am I allowed to say it on there? On
Yes,
air?
of course you are. We talk about everything on this channel.
I say
Just
my life aspiration is to die at 103 while I'm having my last orgasm. So I'm coming as I'm going.
I love it. Neville's got some fantastic jokes, and he brings humor to this thing called being human, and what does that involve? And of course, lots of humans have different experiences. They have different growth spurts, let's put it, throughout
Yeah,
their life. and how
Yes.
that translates into bringing a wholeness to them. Neville, you spoke about shamans. Can you, in your words, give me a definition of what is a shaman?
Yes. If we go back before the industrial age and before cities, when you look at the First Nation peoples of all of the countries around the world, that they had, they were usually in tribes. They usually had a chief, and the secondary person, if you like, in the tribe was a shaman. Now, the shaman was a kingmaker or a chief maker, was a medicine person, medicine man or woman, was a spiritual leader, was a creative dancer, and sometimes they were actually on the edge of madness. They dealt in the spirit world. They dealt in other realms. When the tribe faced great crises like the pandemic or whatever, they went into their own soul and discovered what was the cause of this, and then they brought healing. So when you go on shamanic journeys, you're going into the absolute depth of your psyche, and you are discovering both some baddies, because like our psyche, our soul, our unconscious has a few baddies, but it's got much treasures, wonders, gorgeous things, huge potential. And in the shaman journeys, you see these symbolically. You see them as power animals. You see them as mountains and suns and moons and rivers. And for example, one of the journeys I went on, I was deep down into my psyche, traveling down, 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 down. And I saw this crypt, and I went in, and lying on the crypt was a dead body. It was dead, but it was a full body. And when I walked in, and I was in the shape of a North American tribal, naked at the top, moccasin, breeches, a feather in my hair. And when I walked in, this figure stood up, and I knew intuitively this was the old me. And the figure rose up and sort of went above me and entered into me the wrong way, like the face was at the back. Then the figure went up again, turned, and came inside me. And I had the most joyous revelation of being able to reclaim my total previous self and know that it was transformed. So those sort of journeys are, you can, in a 30-minute journey, you travel in terms of understanding and awareness and behavior change and transformation. You travel lifetimes. And
Literally.
the interesting thing is that when we study what the various shamans have developed in different cultures around the world, there is an enormous similarity. And we can only say that they have tapped into the great archetypal consciousness, collective unconscious or consciousness of humanity, regardless of culture and regardless of geography. And that's actually quite stunning if you think about it. The isolated people that we would call primitive peoples, pre-urban, pre-culture, pre-civilization cultures, developed a universal awareness and universal methodologies of healing, art, excuse me, spirituality, and personal transformation.
I've got that many questions to ask you when we start talking in this realm from your personal experience. And as you know, I do a lot of this work too, and it's the intelligence is a resource that I think humanity is moving into now.
Yes.
We're getting out of the three-dimensional time space consciousness of limitation because AI has replaced it effectively.
Yeah.
If you have any type of memory of intelligence, I can just get on ChatGPT and download it in seconds. It's basically the best gift we've got is to let go of the old operating system, which we'll call
Yeah.
binary consciousness,
Yes.
as we move into this new realm. Is that what you think is the biggest growth spurt at 82? Is it that operation, that
Yes.
upgrade?
Yes. That and more. There's a guy called Howard Gardner who I think used the word intelligence, and most people, I think, when they hear the word intelligence, think of IQ. You know, like how bright you are or dumb you are. Um, Howard Gardner showed that there were, in fact, at least 11 types of intelligence. These include spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence, natural intelligence, spatial intelligence, and so on. Um, the first thing that's happening around the world, and this is tapping into
Emil,
the
you just touched your microphone, and it kind of did that
oh, right,
scattering sound. Yeah.
okay.
So try not to block that. But mate, come back to the 11th intelligence, please.
As you know, I find it very hard to talk without using my hands. So, um, yes, so there's at least 11 types of intelligence, and these intelligence is structured in terms of the level of our awareness or out of awareness or whatever, but they're there in the basement, and they're there in different cultures. So um, because of the amount of disruption that's occurring around the world, I call it a steep disruption: social, technological, ecological, economic, and political disruption. um, Many people are moving away from only looking at the wealth that's external. They're beginning to increasingly look at the wealth that's internal. And by the way, the word wealth comes from an old English word meaning weal or well-being, which is what the word what we find in the Commonwealth of Australia, the common weal, the common well-being of Australia. And so more and more people are beginning to look not just at physical wealth, assets and resources and homes and money and all that stuff. They're also beginning to look, and I've seriously looked at the wealth within the range of intelligences, the range of natural talents, the potential. And I've been and have all my life developed what I call mindware, which is the hardware, software technology to turn us into the best version of us. And tapping into that once again is why I'm getting the acceleration of my own life.
Mm. And you mentioned this huge change we're going through.
Yes.
And uh, from your experience, in the 70 years of business, have you seen this type of change on so many different levels coming at the same time?
Yes and no. I find it interesting. I was tracking the other day, virtually every generation, sorry, every 10 years, every decade, um, since I've been born, there's been a major publication, a major research, a major book that says, hey, we're going through huge disruption, huge change, the best ever or the worst ever. And people respond to that in two ways. We're heading towards the last days, Armageddon, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and people like me who say, "Hey, this is a movement towards a steep renaissance, a total rebirth of the social, technological, ecological, economic, and political framework." To answer then your question, even though I've heard this iterated many, many times in my 70 years of being in business, um, right now I believe the quality, quantity, and depth of the change is unparalleled in our lifetime.
Mm. And when we talk about unparalleled in this lifetime, I mean, do you find a correlation with the 26,000 year cycle that has been well and truly spoken about within a lot of the traditional, ancient civilizations such as the Egyptians and so forth? Do you find a correlation with this at all, or does it even matter?
Um, Again, yes and no. Like the reality is, humankind is always going through transformations, human cultures, human civilizations. One of the great themes of history is stability versus change. And both exist. Like, there are things, social norms, economic ways, properties and houses that continue through all cultures and all times. They're part of the universal consciousness, or universal unconscious. But at the same time, there are these great cycles. And so whether or not they link in with the 26th of whatever, I don't know. What I do know is I honestly believe in my lifetime, this is the biggest change process we've ever seen.
Can you elaborate a little bit for anyone listening who's obviously feeling the beats of these changes, how it's sort of the ripple effect is coming to our civilization? So like what are these sectors? What changes do you see? And what should people be doing?
Right. I think just about everybody at some time. Pardon?
Just a small question.
Sorry?
Just a small question.
Yes. Let me try and frame it. Just about everybody would have heard of the analogy, which I think is a false analogy, and I'd like to come back to in a minute, about the half glass, half full. There's some really good learnings in that. But that old analogy used to be said, look, some people view the world, whether it's stable or changing, in a pessimistic way. And some people view it in an optimistic way. We know from evolutionary biologists that in times of change or fear or threat, the human mind has at least a 70% bias towards negativity, fear, fight, flight, bunkering down, that sort of thing. So quite clearly, what we are seeing at the moment is three broad responses. There's a lot going on, but it doesn't impact me. I'm okay. Or God help us, we're heading towards, the end of the time. I can't do anything about it. It's terrible. It's shocking. I might as well lie down and die. And then there are others like us saying, hey, yeah, look, there's lots going wrong. But these are, in every problem, there is an opportunity. In every disruption, in every negative, there is also a positive. And there is such a great chance for us to have agency at the moment. One of the many things that are happening is long COVID. And we are now getting quite clear evidence that long COVID changed brain structures, changed the interactions between the way our brain operates. And if you look at it, you're finding around the whole world, there are people who have lost agency. That means they have lost their sense that they can do something about their future. And so, we're having demonstrations about, hey, the government's got to do this, the government's got to change. We're having people showing a great deal of apathy, disillusionment, suicide rates are up, all sorts of drug taking, and, anything that will dull the pain is occurring around the world. Violence, domestic violence, students not being able to cope with the world as it is. So it's these three forces are playing out very strongly at every level, social, technological, etc., as I've said, and that's profound. So it's like we've got three communities, if you like. Those who are despairing, those who are just, everything's okay or whatever, and those of us who are really seeking to make major changes.
Mm. And as you say, the ripple effect back, I mean, a lot of people that listen to this are in business. They're also working on their consciousness to rise in that consciousness, to be able to see it in a positive way.
Yeah.
But the structures, I find everything's been built in a binary. I call it Windows 95 because I'm quite cheeky, and things have been built in a competitive time space consciousness, and people are from the inside out breaking away or wanting to be away from that type of consciousness and into more of a collaborative, find their own personal genius. And what does that look like? And people who have already got existing businesses with hierarchy structures in place, because that was the thing with your traditional, mortgages and debt, investor relations, customer relations, like the actual inner fabric of what they're doing and how they're doing it, and their culture within their organizations is radically, changing at such a rapid pace. How do you speak to that? What do you like, after the 70 years? And I love always hearing your wisdom, Neville. And anyone listening can obviously hear this incredible human being we have in front of us. So I just want to extract as much juice out of this yummy human being.
Thank you. Well, just three things quickly. You used the word human being. I think we are human beings. That's a static thing, but increasingly we are humans becoming. That is, we are in a period of all sorts of transition and change and transformation and transcendence, which I love. Secondly, you talked about, did you say bicameral? No, you used a different word, thinking. Not, you didn't say bicameral, you didn't say bilateral, you said bi something or other.
Geez.
Putting you on the spot now.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Zeros
Well,
and ones.
either or thinking, two ways. But
binary.
that's binary. Binary. So, it used to be, we're male or female, and now, we're male, female, he, she, it, a bit of each other. The binary thinking that's dominated in the Western world goes right back to Aristotle, way back. And he consolidated logic and whatever, and that's worked its way right through our system. So if you look at nearly every aspect of our decision making or our thoughts or the way we are the world, it's either or. I am either male or female. This is either black or white. This is either good or bad, right or wrong. But increasingly, as the Asian cultures have always known, it's not that. It's this plus this plus this plus this. It's, in good there is bad, in bad there is good. And in a sense, that transformation of thinking or mindsets is what we're going through, or if we're not going through, we are lost. And I use the analogy that the past is now a dead country. And if we're still living there in our minds, then we are either dead, dying, or on the way to obsolescence.
And that increase of obsolescence as this big deep change is happening, like you said, like you have a look at our political structures around the world, you look at economics,
Yeah.
just to name a few.
Look at, for example, the divided states of America, as I call them. They like they are tearing themselves apart. And you can see the chances of another civil war occurring. And in fact, 38% of millennials and below, the younger generation in America, believe a civil war is inevitable. But you've got, people who are living tremendously in the past and trying to take it back, to a white nation, and where America is the greatest and the best and the only power one. And then the people who come from diverse and cultural backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds. And there's a huge tension between, the unified single white group, nearly all men, often poorly educated, and the the diverse cultures of the rest of America. Just as in Australia, like, I think we've got something like 78 at least major cultures existing in Australia. So it's that division now that's occurring, and it's growing. Like, it's always been there, but the tension now is just clearer and clearer.
So what's the outlook then, Neville? Here we are, 2024, midway. Where are we by 2028? Like in 4 years' time? And then obviously into the 2030s. Like what are you seeing from your experience, and how does one navigate this?
Depressing excitement or excitement depression. Like there is no one future ahead. There's no future. The future is not something that's out there waiting for us to discover it. The future is what we are creating. And so there are desperate people who are creating very terrible, bad futures. There are neutral people who are not creating any sorts of futures. And there are positive futures, positive people who are seeking to change the fabric of our globe, change our society, change our technology, change our ecology, our planet, change our economics, change our political systems, create better futures for us and for everyone. All of that's happening at once. It's not this or that or that.
And so someone listening to this says, you know what, I've got some big symptoms in my life. I've got it in my finances. I've got it in my marriage. I've got it in my internal conflicts and turmoil, you know, and, you know, they're listening to this and they're really trying to grapple with these internal things that are happening.
Yeah.
What do you say to that person who's, let's say, midway in their life? They're heavy in their responsibilities with children and costs and things like that. They're
Yes.
worried about their finances. They're worried about their jobs, or they're worried about what they're metamorphosizing into.
Yep.
How do you speak to that?
Have you got 10 hours?
No, but you know, we need the highest helicopter view.
Okay. Well, where I start with anyone is starting with the notion of awareness and self-awareness. Awareness of what's going on in the world. Excuse me while I have a cough.
Okay.
So where I always start is twofold. First of all, awareness of what's going on in the world, and secondly, self-awareness, awareness of what's happening to me, and then from there moving on to acceptance. So awareness and self-awareness, starting to define the portfolio of issues, strengths, weaknesses, talents, problems, challenges that we're facing. Then come to a point of acceptance where we say, okay, these is as they is. I is as I is, warts and all, with all these challenges and problems. The world is as it is. Now what? Okay, so interestingly, those two things are very important. Then we come to a deep, deep psychological principle called the paradoxical principle of change. And what that says is it's a bit like New Year's resolutions. You and I know that every year we create a whole lot of New Year's resolutions, and 3 months later, nearly all of them are undone, or we started them and have stopped them. Why is that? Because the paradoxical theory of change says the more we seek to change, the less we do. The more we seek, the more we accept we are okay as we are, warts and all, challenges and all, problems and all. That's okay. The more we change.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds stupid, but
Not at all.
the difference of those is that when I was in evangelical, I was always being told how bad, 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 bad I am, and that was a starting point. And, I had to get better, and, here's the pathway to getting better, and do this and do that and the other. And for me, it didn't work. When we come to the paradoxical principle of change and acceptance, we are saying, despite everything, I am okay. I is, it is okay. That's starting from a positive principle of goodness, not a principle of wrongness.
You know,
Okay.
it's a I remember when I was living with Guru Singh in Los Angeles, and I had my awakening or explosion into the quantum realm. Let's put it that way. And I was very delicate. Psychosis.
One of your men.
Yes, yes, that's right. Yes, well, it hasn't ended since. But he would say from a quantum point of view, you know, if what we're okay with must change.
Yes.
And it's a radical
And
paradox.
what we're not okay with tends not to change.
Yeah. What we resist persists.
Yes, and we've seen this in the work realm because one of the most extensive psychological and social studies ever done was done by the Gallup organization, and they interviewed well over 1 million people in and 80 managers in no 80,000 managers in 16 or 17 countries, and they were looking at the whole notion of training and how you developed to become the best you at possible at work. And what they discovered was that literally hundreds of millions of dollars were being wasted in trying to train people out of their weaknesses, uh, and instead of training and developing their talents into masteries, their strengths into masteries. And
Mm.
this is fundamental. Like, what we need to do is put our weaknesses in the bottom drawer, um, uh, work on our strengths, our talents, turn those into masteries, become the best, fulfill the potential, the positive potential within us. And when we do that, the bottom drawer goes away, right?
Does it go away permanently? Or I mean, like from
No,
what
no,
you
no, no,
experience,
no.
so
It's
how
in
do
the
you how
brain.
do you how do you how do you work with the talent and the bottom drawer coming at you at once?
Well, you and I know, well, most people will be honest that in the wee hours of the night when they wake up, 2 or 3 in the morning, uh, and the mind starts to go into overdrive, that's when the bottom drawer opens, the shame, the blame, I can't do this, I can't cope, I fucked that up, that that's when that comes. And so, what we need to do is to learn the skills and the masteries of dealing with those voices and tell them to shut up, go back in the drawer, and you close the drawer. That's and like those voices stay there. They're there all the time,
Hmm.
and
Do you
we,
feel like
we
those
have to
voices
fix
have
it.
some intelligence though?
Pardon?
Do they have some intelligence? Is there anything to draw from them at all?
Well, they're our memories. So that they're our combined intelligence squeezed into our memories, packed into our memories. But it's the bad side of the equation, not the good side of the equation.
Mm.
And
So
that's
how do
what.
you live? What's if there was a mathematical equation, you know, the good side, times by three, plus or minus the draw side.
Well, we know it's for something that I said before from evolutionary biologists that when we are on times of stress or distress, or there's fear or whatever occurring in our life or in the environment, then the negative thoughts, the negative voices have a 70% bias,
Mm, mm. Yeah.
and we need to find techniques to transform those, shut them up, tell them to go away, say you're unreal. We have to Donald Trump them.
Oh, I love the way Neville communicates. It's always wonderful. So as we're facing the tsunami of change across all these different sectors, right? The news and I actually don't have a television anymore. I'm completely I'm not interested. Nor do I want it shatter down in my kids in their ears. But for those that are still in mainstream media, the noise is, as far as I'm concerned, from a distance, it's loud, like, and it's screaming. There's a crash economically tomorrow. There's a plague coming the next. There's AI wrecking this. There's a, I mean, as the we're up at 1 or 2 in the morning and we're trying to navigate our way into a prosperous, positive future. And as you say, it's a multiverse. From your point of view, how are you jumping uh, into the multiverse, and how did that shamanic training in I think you said in the early 20s, and it went on obviously in different octaves. How is that now the backbone of your growth?
Well, okay. Hmm. Look, let's accept a reality that at the moment we are all living permanently on Titanic 2. That's a modern, wonderful, glorious ship that's sailing the world. driven by nuclear energy.
Sure.
That's an image. Now imagine that inner coil is heating up, and whether or not we know it, the ship has gone up in its temperature 2 to 3, maybe 4 degrees, and that's becoming permanent. A little while, excuse me, a little while ago, a massive wave, a tsunami, hit the bow of the ship and washed away a lot of the structure of the ship. And then, my gosh, a pandemic hit, and it killed 1/3 of the residents, who had to be tossed overboard and fed by the sharks. Right now, that, regardless of being negative or positive, that's a reality, isn't it? Like, that's the world we are living in at the moment. So now we have a choice about our response to that. We can say, all right, nothing to do with me. I'll just bunker down. We can say, all right, as these events happen, I will react and I'll do something then. Or we can be more active and say, well, look, I think what I ought to do is start rearranging the deck chairs on Titanic 2, so that I can have a more comfortable life. Or we can say proactive, hey, this ship's sinking. What am I going to do about it? How now am I going to marshal me to become the best me possible, given these circumstances? How am I going to marshal my business so it becomes a business that does something about ecological change? And how do I build better relationships, build a tribe, a supportive system? How do I work more not towards creating single customers, but creating a community that mutually supports each other and collaborates each other and creates new things together? How do I create a better world? That becomes a choice. And I say that this is a major move in our mental thinking from me to we. That we need to see that we're on the sinking Titanic together. It doesn't mean the end of us or the end of civilization. It just means the end of our past life, our past way of being. So, and that's a mind change shift, and then it leads to action, and we've all got to do that, I think. But
Absolutely.
I'm noticing that people are quite happy to sit in the deck chairs, change the deck chairs, and not even bother to get on the lifeboat. And I'm noticing
Absolutely.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I actually, one of our last podcasts was with a guy called Phil Anderson, who's been studying economics all his life. He's an incredible economist, and it's well worth listening to that podcast. But how people are happy to continue on shuffling chairs on the Titanic, I think it's a very important and interesting task. And then, okay, there's a bunch of people on the Titanic who are listening to this podcast, and they're saying, you know what? Yeah, I can do something about this.
And I want to stress
about,
the Titanic is not the end of the world.
no,
The Titanic is the end of the way we have lived.
yes, but that could also mean the end of the way your business is, the way your finances is operating, the way you've
Absolutely.
living.
Yeah.
So, the Titanic is the metaphor of really the infrastructure of which you have created safety from. And so if
Yes.
the actual thing, the fabric of that is breaking apart, okay, what do we do? And now this shift from I to we, I mean, you and I teach similar things, and I think this is a really good way to actually show this. This is a calibration and a
Yeah.
collaboration
Yeah.
of like, wow, I listened to this going, wow, I missed that part. Wow, that's like the wisdom coming out of you. I've always respected and loved. And there's a unique genius, like a fingerprint that is so unique to all of us. And when we recognize that with each other, there's an incredible collaborative effort. And along with that, I think the fabric of society shifts. Like we spoke about with Phil Anderson, a paper he wrote a number of years ago that I read called The Citizen's Dividend. And I've heard you talk about similar things actually. And he spoke about that if we didn't enclose the rent, which was allowed to capitalize then we wouldn't have these economic cycles. We wouldn't have the wars that we've had because we wouldn't be fighting over these economic resources. And we would then put it into a citizen's dividend. And that would actually cancel all government taxes plus put money in everyone's pocket. And then we could go on these huge journeys of discovery. And, like for a lot of people listening to that, like where their Titanic's built upon property and their safety about that, like even myself as a real estate developer, well, we've got a current Titanic that's happening. We're accepting that it's breaking down, but we have to make moves to create a new system that doesn't try to fix the old one because that ain't going to happen. We have to replace it with something that.
Well, some of the old system will continue, like, land will continue, but it will be transformed. Uh, Ownership of buildings will continue. But given the fact that, for example, right now, 25% of buildings around the world are uninsurable, either, the insurers will not insure them, or the premium they put on it, insure it, is sort of very close to the cost value of the house,
Sure.
or the building. So, excuse me, that simple change is bringing many changes. You've hit a really important part. Several times in the last year, as I've been talking similar to this, I've been asked by the interview, oh, but look, in small businesses, we are so busy, everything, our time is full. How are we going to adapt and change? And I say, well, look, that's simply reordering the deck chairs on the Titanic. The reality is that given your lifestyle, the way we've done it, the way we've lived is sinking, there's a lifeboat. That lifeboat is not anything like this massive Titanic, with all of the things. But it's still a ship. It's still a boat. Now,
Mm.
make a decision. Cut yourself away from the Titanic, accept that elements of it are gone, and hop into the bloody lifeboat, and row, uh,
Yeah.
row to a different future.
Mm, mm. And look, in navigating that future, and I like to talk about this from a shamanic point of view,
Yes.
where we're guiding ourselves to the unknown from all your years of experience and the noise that everyone do this and do that. How does one navigate? They're in that new lifeboat. How do they set
Uh,
and they don't want to exhaust themselves with the oars. They've only got so much energy left, after having to jump from that wonderful Titanic. How do they navigate this?
um, in the world, both the maritime world and the aeroplane world, there is a different type of compass, which doesn't point to near north, near north, true north. It points to magnetic north. What airplanes and ships have is, they have I've forgotten the name of it, man. How it'll come to me. It's a particular type of compass that swings through 360 degrees, and it always points to true north, no matter what the turbulence is. Now, we all have.
Gyroscope? Is that what they're
Pardon?
called? Is it a gyroscope? Or am I
Gyroscope.
just
That's it. Yeah,
yeah?
that's it.
Okay,
Gyroscope.
great.
That's the word I was searching for. Now, the answer to your question is that we need to tap into our inner gyroscope. And that gyroscope is based on what our values are, what is important, and the purposes of life that we define for ourselves. So, for example, if we say, the purpose of my life is to make sure that I, number one, am okay no matter what, well, then that becomes our gyroscope. And we will act in accordance with that. If we say, my need now is to build a community where we share ideas and we share resources and we collaborate together and we eat meals together, and we have the elements of an old tribe, uh, and also that I need as part of this to become the very best me possible. That becomes a gyroscope. And that helps us make decisions. It helps us, but without that inner gyroscope, the seas are pretty rough, and we don't have the oars to row fast enough to get us to dry land.
Mm. And like, what are the consequences for humanity, do you think, in 50 years if we don't jump in these lifeboats and create new um, collaborative, away from the binary system that AI is basically replaced anyway? What happens?
Uh, Quite a bit of current humanity who exists now will be gone, and new humanity will come in with different attitudes, different ways, different survival techniques.
Is this an evolutionary step?
Yeah,
Like,
yes,
what's
of course. Like, uh, I'm going to be here till 103, but a lot of people,
coming as you go? Yes, that's right.
that gives me 21 years, but a lot of people in 20 years are not going to be here. Like, you know, uh, that's just natural, isn't it? Like, there's nothing you or I will do about that. Um,
You
and
you mean as in like, it's like the Henry Ford, factory building humans, and we're just going to cut off that particular consciousness DNA from the expansion.
well, it's
Uh,
called death. It's called death. Like,
no, but
you ask,
not depending on age. Is it a consciousness thing?
well, every generation has its consciousness shaped by its geography and its environment and its circumstances at the time. And the new generation, they are having a very different consciousness to what you and I have.
Mm.
And
Oh, absolutely. I see it with my children.
then there's all the little babies that have yet to be born over the next 20 years. They're moving through with a different mindset and different awareness, a different consciousness, different skill sets, different environment that they're operating, different decisions, different responses. And the oldies but goldies are falling off the edge. It's
Mm.
natural evolution. I think that's why death exists anyway, to make sure that humanity survives.
Hey, what's your beliefs on this, Neville? Like, when we're born, there's an astrological natal chart.
Yeah.
The planets are at certain angles and so forth, and that has a certain correlation to your genetic structure, let's call it. And um, uh, as we're moving into the Aquarius, is that um, is those planets shifting, and because of that, their frequency imprint on the DNA is shifting?
I'd like to draw a distinction between a fact and an interpretation. Uh, the fact is that we know that roughly 50% of everything we are and everything we do has been determined by our genetics, our DNA, our genomes, by our upbringing, by the size of society and our culture, and that roughly 50% of everything is open to our change and agency and transformation. Uh, that I take to be a fact. Why that is so, whether it's the planets or
Are you putting
whether,
that fact under the name of epigenetics? The
yeah,
study, yeah,
well, going back to the other either or that we've been brought up, there's so many studies. Is it hereditary or environment? Is it nature or nurture? Well, the answer is it's both, and it's roughly 50%. So it's epigenetics, but it's also training and decision making and options and growth. They're both existing. So it's stasis and it's change. We're in a railway track, but we regularly come to a place where the railway track diverges, and where also we are able to move from a narrow gauge to a wider gauge of railway tracks. We've got that ability to change, but there's still railway tracks. There's still stuff that's predetermined. Now, why that is so? Is it the planets? Is it astrology? Is it God? Is it I, I'm
cock and
very
balls, sausage
pardon?
roll and chips. Is it? I just use lots of different names.
Yeah, like when I work with people on an individual level, they say, "Look, I've got this problem. I've got this problem." We now come to a choice. We can say, "All right, we can now spend the next 7 years working 3 times a week on why that is so, or we can make up a reason. And let's make up the reason that it's because of the way your mother dressed you. Is that all right? Yeah, all right.
Sure.
So we now know why you're a shit. Okay. Let's, all right. We've
Now
got
let's
a
focus
reason.
on the
Now we
change.
can focus on what do you want to do differently.
Mm. So before at the start of this
That's why I would
podcast,
say I think there are facts of life and there are interpretations, and the interpretations are wide and varied, but we can make one up because the brain needs a why, must have a why. Why am I like this?
the reason why I like to pose that question to you is because I love that your feet are on the ground, but you're also shamanic, and it expands in all your years in business and so forth. And
Yeah, but
uh,
that's only been one sort of reality I've dealt with.
correct, yeah. I mean, like when I had my experiences, I remember having a meditation in the bath, and I
Looking
could.
down on the unemployed or looking down on the usefully employed.
I think probably had a bit of a belly at that stage, so maybe not seen anything. But yeah, uh, and I remember going into in my own journey, I could change the year that I died, and I could literally change that. And equally, I then experienced a drastic like a terror, and it took me 3 to 4 hours in that meditation to get out of that.
Yes.
And I realized that what what I think is real energetically, vibrationally, and that's why I say the word epigenetics, and we use, is it a fact? Is it an interpretation? I think that that's what's wildly changing. For
Yes.
me personally, I had that experience. It's not something I talk about on a
Yes.
public realm like this because it's not acceptable. But I think more discussions are going to be like this. Like, what can we actually change?
My
What is
friend,
the fact?
you've hit on something really, really profound, and it's so important. I'd like to just spend a moment on it. Um, in the work I do, I say that every human being, every business, every organization, every nation, every family has four stories. Those four stories are the past story, which has explaining power of why things are as they are. The present story, which is all about the resources, assets, potential that we have, the networks, etc. The future story is the aspirational story. It has motivational power. Who do we want to be? Where do we want to go? What sort of land do we want to go to? Which rowboat do we want to get into? Which Titanic do we want to build? And then the gap story or the bridge story is the actioning one. It says, well, this is who I am now. This is who I want to be, and these are the actions I need to take to get there. Now, one of the most amazing things about the past story is, first of all, uh, it never is as we remember. It never was as we remember it. Like uh,
Mm,
as it went into our memories, there were all sorts of biases and distortions and misinformation that went in. So the basis of the story of our past is part fiction to start with. We know that as different events occur and we want to explain that, we reinterpret our story. We change it. We tell it in a different way. We give a different emphasis. And the third thing we know is that while we do that unconsciously, we're not aware of it. We just do it. We now know that and this is called narrative therapy, if we actually consciously change our past story and make it far better, you know, take out the victim bits, take out the bad bits and transform them into good bits and opportunity bits and growth bits and potential bits, we change our present story and we change our future story.
mm.
So fictionalizing our past story makes it a fact story.
Yes. To your choice.
Yes, it's our choice. And that's the most wonderful, 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 wonderful thing about human beings, because we are rational, but we're also creative and imaginary and fictionalized. We've got both. And what's more powerful is the dream, the imagining, the creativity. That's more powerful than reality.
Mm. And like you said, the balance between that future story in the closet you know, and how do you change, how do you ride that evolutionary in your own personal evolution? How do you ride that double-edged sword? You know, like I've got a free event on this Saturday in public speaking. It's just one of those double-edged swords for me. You know, it's like I love it, or I'm not going to sleep for 2 nights prior.
Yeah.
And so it's how do you ride your highest excitement often also holds in that biggest wound.
Because you do, as you say, like it's not either or, you know, it's not only but also. This is a difficult, stressful, and exciting event. I'm going to accept. Now we go into acceptance. So I accept it is as it is. I accept that I'm going to have 2 nights that, you know, I'm not going to sleep, and I'm going to be all primed and ready, and I'm going to do a fantastic job. Like,
Mm.
it's not only but also. It's both. Uh, there are bad things and good things. In bad, there's good, and in good, there's bad. Like, you know, that's reality. And trying
How
to
do you
pretend.
override that?
Pardon?
Can you override that duality,
You,
that
yes,
polarity?
yes, by accepting it is as it is, and
Right.
then say uh, to yourself, I've got a 70% bias towards negativity. I'm going to make it a 70% bias towards positivity. And
Is that the difference between the gods and us?
I've got no idea. I've never met a god.
I'm sure you've had a few goddesses in your time, Neville.
Apart from you and me, of course, but anyway.
Well, so as we face these huge changes, what we're saying is accept um, the good and the bad, and it's an and that we get in that rowboat and we move towards a positive future, and we navigate
Consciously, consciously.
consciously, and
This
we
is
got our
part of
gyroscope.
this is quantum consciousness, isn't it? That
Yes, yes.
we say waves can become particles and particles can become waves. Bad can become good. I choose to do that. I choose to I choose to interpret this in the best light,
Mm. And
right?
how different is that consciousness from when you were born and the schooling that you came up with and that operating system?
How's it changed?
No,
So
how different is at now that you're at 82? And I mean, why now at 82? Is that got to do with the 26,000 year cycle? Like, is this an evolutionary jump that humanity is going to do? How many people are coming on this journey?
I don't know.
How many is going to be left behind? Does that even matter?
I'm happy if you, me, and everybody we listen to are on that journey.
Yeah. So as the future starts coming, there's going to be a few
I mean,
groups.
sorry, my life goal is at the moment, I have a website that I've got 200 people that I'm sending out material once a week to. I want to get that to 1,000, and then I want to get that to 10,000 over the next 3 years, and then hopefully it'll be self-perpetuating. Uh, then I'm hoping that each of those one people influence one other person, then 100 other people, then 200 other people, then 1,000 other people, and then 10,000. Like the pool, you throw a pebble into a still pool and it ripples. And it's that rippling effect that to me is really important for you and me and everyone else to do.
How important is this shift to in that lifeboat to turn your life to service, as in to serve the realm? Uh, how important is that for survival of business in the next 20 years?
Um, this gets us into very complicated principles of philosophy, economics, society, and politics, because for some people, the answer is still very much individual capitalism, isn't it? You know, me, 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 me. For me and others, I'm not a communist. I'm not a socialist. I'm I'm a dedicated business person. I see we need caring capitalism now. We capitalism. It's different. We need stakeholder capital rather than shareholder capital. We need collective innovation rather than solo innovation. We need shared equity rather than me equity. They're my views about what's really really important, but they're not shared.
Mm,
Right?
mm,
Uh,
mm. And that's why I'm
I
always
think I think they're essential to survival, like because being born in the war, what was wonderful about the war was, some of us had chickens, some of us had pumpkins, some of us were still going to school, some of us had a car, some of us didn't. And during that wartime, there was an enormous community in our streets and our local area. People shared, people talked with each other, people, shared when there was a death because one of their soldiers had been killed. There was a we spirit. Why? Because we were under attack. It was war. We're under war. It's warfare now. Yeah.
Mm.
We need to share. We need to cooperate. We need to collect. We need to do things together. We, not me. That's my humble view. And
Mm.
I think it's core to our survival.
Mm. And the ones that are I still in those old systems is still shuffling decks on the Titanic, so to speak.
Well, I can name a few people: Donald Trump, Mr. Putin. I always forget his name. The head of China. The Ayatollah in Iran.
Yeah, yeah. Neville, I think we've come to a natural end right there. We've definitely brought an enormous amount there. People listening to you right now, and they say, "Hey, I'd like to know more about you." That email that you just talked about.
Yes.
How can people find you, mate?
If you know how to spell Renaissance, which is
Huh?
it means rebirth. Renaissance, Renaissance. My website is Steep, STEEP, standing for social, technological, ecological, economic, and political, renaissance.com. Right. steeprenaissance.com. Go there and subscribe.
Perfect. And Neville, thanks for being on Quantum Achievers. It's always an incredible discussion with yourself. The books behind you and the many books and all your other offices just come out through you, and you're obviously your natural wisdom as well. And it's just wonderful to hear someone of your status, your age, getting out there and making life happen, and being in one of those lifeboats and with a big smile on your face, paddling like all buggery to the new world.
Oh, thank you. I've been delighted, and I hope I've been delightful as well.
Oh, you have, you always are.
Yeah.
Again, thanks, Neville Christie. And for those interested, go to steeprenaissance.com and check him out. Thanks heaps, Neville.
Okay, thank you.